Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight's going to be an interesting night. But before I introduce my guest, I just want to say this. Spring is finally starting to show its face. The grass is green. The flowers are beginning to show their face. And it just feels so good, doesn't it? What else was I going to mention? Within a matter of just a few days, the legislative session is projected to be ending, and they won't be able to do any damage from here on out. No, they do some good things, but anyway, nevertheless. So that's my opinion, having been down there myself. Tonight I have two guests that I've just met minutes ago for the first time, and it's going to be very interesting because they know a whole lot more about what we're going to be talking about tonight than I know. I've been trying to do my homework, so just bear with me, but I'm looking forward so much to hearing from them about what it is they are doing in Burlington and basically worldwide. So with that, I would like to introduce my two guests. To my immediate left is Lise Verano. Welcome to the show, Lise.
Bonjour.
And to her left is Richard Gleish.
Bonsoir.
Welcome. Bonsoir. A little bit of high school French will creep in, but not much. So I'm so glad to have you two on the program. I know I'm going to learn a lot tonight, as well as my guests. So with that, I know that you are heavily involved with AFLCR, which is the, I won't say it French, Alliance Francaise.
Alliance Francaise de Lake Champlain.
Okay.
Lake Champlain Region, Alliance Francaise.
There you go. Alliance. It's an alliance.
Yes.
French and with France, so to speak, and Lake Champlain or the Burlington area.
The greater Burlington area and Lake Champlain area as a whole. So,
yes. Okay. Got it. And why don't you, if you would, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, Lise? Because I know you're a busy woman involved in, I think they have a name for you that's...
Renaissance woman.
Renaissance woman. But why don't you just give us a little overview of who you are and the kinds of things that you're involved with?
Okay, so I'm with the Alliance Francaise. I'm a board member, and I have been for quite a few years. I'm also with the Honfleur sister city with Burlington and Vermont and Honfleur, France. I'm the president there. I was asked by the mayor about 7 years ago now to head up this committee, and we've been doing some trips and art initiatives. And then I'm also with the North American Cities of Francophones and Francophiles. I represent the mayor of Burlington, Mayor Weinberger, on that initiative. I work full-time as the oversight of finance and technology for the Burlington Fire Department and Burlington Police Department.
You do not have enough to do.
Oh, and that's why I'm here. I'm filling in the gap.
Well, you're going to need, as we go along, to explain what these various groups are, and then what they're about.
Okay.
Okay?
Will do.
Now, Richard, how about you? Why don't you tell us about you?
So I'm Richard Gleish. I'm originally from France, but have pretty much lived most of my adult life in the U.S., mostly in Burlington, Vermont, actually. So French language is, being my native language has always been important to me. I'm also professionally, I have my own French translation business, so I'm focusing on French, and I'm on the board of the Alliance Francaise as a secretary. I'm also in the Honfleur Sister City Committee, with Liz, also as a secretary, actually.
You're keeping busy.
Exactly.
He's secretary and communications. In other
Okay.
words, he does a lot of our translations too to make sure all our communications are
Okay.
properly
Yeah.
translated.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you're a family man.
And I have 3 children that, so my wife's American, but she learned French.
That would be
after
helpful.
we met, and we managed to raise 3 bilingual children, so which was...
That must be interesting to do.
It's interesting. It's a challenge, but it's very rewarding, especially when visiting family in France.
Sure, then they can communicate.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So most of your family in France?
Yes, on my side, parents, siblings, yes.
Yes, okay. Well, I find this very interesting. It's a whole new perspective for me. And you never know what's going on in your state.
No.
Right.
You know, until somebody reaches out and says, hey, how about talking about this on your program?
Sure.
So,
Thank you for offering us to do
Yes.
that.
I'm happy to do it. You know, I like to learn.
Right.
My philosophy is just keep learning.
Right.
And so thank you for coming. Why don't you tell the viewers, first of all, what the Alliance Francaise does. And, you know, I wrote a whole bunch of questions down, like bringing Quebec and Northern Vermont together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Explain a little bit of that. It's about teaching French, partially,
Yeah.
and so much more. Just to, how do I build a friendship and a connection between the communities and the people in the 2 different, Now, Quebec, if I'm correct, is the only French-speaking part of Canada. Is that right?
Yes and no. It's the only one where French is the only
Primary.
official. Yeah. There are a few, from what I know, there are a few provinces that are officially bilingual, such as New Brunswick and Ontario, maybe. Definitely New Brunswick.
Okay.
Everything is bilingual there.
Okay. I know years ago there was big controversy over
Yeah.
the French and the English, how that was all going to work. I do remember that. But so a little bit about the goals of the Alliance.
We should talk about the teaching.
Yeah.
One of the
Sure.
things that the Alliance is prominent with is teaching classes, and you can go on the website and you can qualify yourself for a beginner conversation French all the way to an advanced level of French. A lot of people who learned French in school and now as adults want to get back that language and able to communicate a little bit better. And they'll come in and take a class. And our director of education, Michel Tremblay, is very, very good about placing you in the right class so that you will be successful. And
not
you will-
frustrated.
Not frustrated. That's so important. I think that's what the Alliance Francaise does so well. Is they are very good at putting you with the right group, with the right teachers. And then if you want to go on beyond that, they'll move you up, and you can sign up for more classes.
Now,
And they do business classes too, and if a business wanted to, like a hospitality business, wanted to get their employees to be able to just welcome people, just courtesy, just very basic, like you did when we first met you, just to open the door for a conversation. Because when somebody speaks your language, even if it's just bonjour, just comme ça, comment ça va, just very, very simple.
Sure, sure.
All of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm home. This is comfortable. And
Yes.
you go shopping and you sit down for dinner, and
Yes,
life feels just so more natural.
Especially the hotels. If people are going to come here and spend several days or a week and tour around, not just this area, but maybe other parts, Burlington, whatever, to have that comfort.
Right.
Yeah, so
right.
earlier this year we did actually have a session of classes that were geared specifically for for businesses like that. So
good.
The actual curriculum is specifically geared towards that. So the Alliance more generally, I think we should maybe start by also saying so we're like a non-profit organization, and we're a chapter of a worldwide organization that was started in France over 100 years ago. So there's a foundation in France that kind of provides guidelines as to what the mission is and what and how we should go about our business. And so the general goal is to propagate French language and relationships between French-speaking people and the rest of the world, and relationships between. So it tends to be French-centric, a little bit like France, in most places in the world. Like in the U.S., there's about 104 chapters, I think I read.
Really?
So in most major cities in the U.S. do have a chapter of the Alliance Francaise, and they're locally organized, just like us. We're just like local volunteers. The larger ones have some people on staff. We're still kind of trying to figure that one out. But so it's so the French, the classes are usually very central to the activities, and we're really strong with that in our chapter too. And then there's all other types of cultural activities. So for example, we have lectures on subjects that are either French language or French culture related. Sometimes they're in French, sometimes they're in English. We have we also work with St. Michael's College, where they have cycles of Quebecois movies several times a year.
We do lectures.
They also have lectures. So what's really interesting for us actually is this our very specific location here in Vermont, where with the province of Quebec next door, and all the history, like people like Lise, whose parents came from Quebec and who spoke French at home and still speaks French with her family. So we have this other dimension that most other chapters may not have. So we tend to also focus on this special relationship with Quebec and with the Quebecois culture and history. So So like this past year, for example, we had a big Quebecois choir from the city of Quebec came, and that we hosted
at St.
Michael's College. So we things like that. So
Do you find that there are any students at St. Mike's from France? Do you know if there are any? I know they have quite a few from, let me see, China and other places like that, but I don't know.
We don't
know what the statistics are from that. I mean, it's something we could find out. I think we try to be there for people that want to practice their French, people who are French and want to be immersed in French culture. They don't want to lose it. They want their children to be brought up with it. So we have some kids programs. We have at the Alliance Francaise at 43 King Street, which is our second location. We have a location that's right off St. Michael's campus there.
Oh, you do?
We do. We have two sites.
In Colchester.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I was thinking about people who want to learn French, or maybe they know some French, but they want their children to learn because perhaps, just one reason, because maybe the grandparents or the great-grandparents came from France and it's part of their family history.
Yes.
Right.
And so if they go to France sometime, for instance, or even not, it gives them a connection. I know I was in France once on a trip, and it was wonderful.
Right. My daughter, I have a son and a daughter, and they both have a child. My daughter has two. One is 3 years old.
Aww.
And we've been taking him to French story time at the Alliance Francaise because my daughter wants him to have the ear for the French language. If I'm around him, I'll speak French.
Sure.
And they say when kids are little, when they're very little, if they can be around different languages, they will be able to pick it up later in life as well.
Sure. Oh, yeah. It makes it easier.
Right. And then sometimes at Alliance Francaise does events, like the Bastille Day and and then they'll have some programs making la croix, la roi.
La galette des
La
rois.
galette des rois. And so there's
what is
events.
that?
Galette des rois. So we it's on January 6th, which is the...
Oh, it's a day of celebration, or
Yeah, it's the 12th day of Christmas, actually.
Okay.
It's when the three kings were supposed to have arrived to the manger.
The wise king.
So there's a tradition in France where you actually serve a very specific type of cake that has a little token in there, like usually you can use an almond, and whoever gets it becomes the king, and usually it comes with a crown. So it's kind of a
that's
little...
Tradition.
cute.
It's a nice tradition. So several years we've done that, not necessarily every year, but so we would organize a little event for whatever members want to come and,
Oh, that's nice.
So,
yeah. So I just need to bring this up. It doesn't relate to what you're doing, but on my trip to France, I went with a friend, and we stayed in a little hotel with a small road going, through. There were little businesses, bakeries and things like that. And I didn't realize it when we got our room. But one day, before we had a chance to get out and about and do anything, in the morning I opened up the window. I think there might have been a shutter on it, I'm not sure. And I looked around, and there was the Eiffel Tower.
You were close.
Right there.
Yeah.
It was so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wonderful. We went up inside. Yeah. So that's my little. And it was wonderful.
Yeah. They have a lot of nice little balconies in France, and the windows, and a lot of little bay windows, so you can get the view, whether you're in Paris or in Honfleur. If you ever go to Honfleur, get a harbor view of the ocean space.
Okay.
And
I don't know how much more traveling I could do at this point, but it was great.
We have a group from Alliance Francaise that are going in September, and it was open.
Trip to France.
Trip to France.
Oh.
They're going to hit Paris, and then they're going to go to Honfleur, and they're going to do homestays. And the people are being invited into the residents' homes to spend the night, have meals with them.
Very nice.
Right, just to get immersed in the culture as well, not just the foods and the language, but
or the sightseeing, but also really staying with people, and so.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's something we were able to organize because we have both organizations, the Alliance Francaise on one end, who was organizing a trip for its members, and because we have this sister city relationship, which we will talk about a little later, with the city of Honfleur, we were able to arrange that this group would actually have this special treatment and being hosted by local people there. So
Very nice.
So that's 15 people who will be going in September. Yeah.
People who have never been to France before?
I think it's a combination. It's a combination of people. Some of them are students of Alliance Francaise. Some people just heard about it on the website and signed up. Some people have been to France before, but maybe not Honfleur.
But they're all part of the Alliance Francaise.
Yeah, they're members of the Alliance Francaise.
Yeah. I want to get back in a minute to the teaching of French. Okay. But it's the Seine River that goes along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we took a boat ride. They were playing music from the 1950s, which is when I was growing up. And all of these arches going
the bridges,
over the
beautiful.
Oh
right.
my! It was heaven.
Yeah.
If people haven't been to France, I suggest you go to Paris.
Yes. The bridges, the architecture, and all the old buildings and the way they were built, and
a lot of great memories.
a lot of details.
And in the park, there was an artist there, and I have a drawing that he did of me sitting there.
Yes.
A lot of good memories. Anyway, that's not what we're here about. So about the teaching of French, how do you do that in the schools? Do you do that in private schools? Can you get into the schools?
So it's actually mostly classes for adults, and they're at our locations. So we have our own teachers who teach within, like we have those two locations, the one at 40th and Allen in Colchester, and the one on 43 King Street in downtown Burlington.
Okay.
So they're usually classes of up to 12 or 15.
Right,
Yeah.
12 to 15, and you sit around a table. It's very,
very casual, yeah.
Informal.
Informal.
Yeah,
it's
and
like a
very-
living room setting.
And so there's sessions of from 7 to 12 weeks, depending on the session. And it's usually once per week.
They get homework, I presume.
Yeah, I don't have the details, I never, but, and I'm sure it depends on the class too. So it's a small group with one teacher.
Adults or
It's
youth?
Mostly adults tend to be interested because the format works well for adults.
Yeah. And then you're not competing with the schools or whatever.
No, we're not.
No,
We're
no.
trying to be complementary.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we also have our conversation groups.
Like deuxième samedi, like on the second Saturday.
Every
People
month.
will get
Oh, I
together
just
at a
caught
restaurant.
that.
Yeah.
I just caught that.
In French?
Deuxième
Samedi.
Yes.
And every,
You learned that in school,
Samedi, yeah.
right?
and
Days of the week, deuxième.
Yes.
and every third Wednesday, we also host a happy hour at the local hotel at the bar. So for 2 hours, 5 to 7, where people people just come and we try to just speak French.
Practice your French.
Practice your French.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very informal, but it's also a good way for people to meet other people who either speak the language or are, part of the Francophone kind of local scene, and it's been very successful.
A lot of times we'll be, because it's at a hotel and the bar area at the hotel, people who are staying there, visiting downtown, because we're in Burlington for the most part, and they'll hear us talking French, and they'll come over. I've had the occasion so many times, be in the hall, and they're like, hey, they're talking French. Well, viens nous rejoindre, on va parler ensemble. And next thing you know, they'll come in, they'll spend 10, 15 minutes, chit-chat, tell us where they're from. They're traveling from around the world. A lot of times you will get people from other countries, not just France, because we do an event called the Francophone flag raising, international flag raising event, which we just did in May. And it's 28 countries that speak French. So it's not just Quebec, not just France. And so we're trying to expand, be able to be open to all the other French languages as well.
Sure.
And there's a very diverse community in Burlington. So we're trying to reach out, but people don't know we're there. People, like you said, people don't know Alliance Francaise exists. Right, so we have to go out, do more about going out and reaching people. So when we are in a restaurant having dinner and practicing our French, or we're sitting at happy hour chit-chatting and people hear us, they find out about what's going on in the community, what's available.
So for example, one new dimension for us, and it's kind of one of our goals, and we're working on that, is that we do have a whole new French-speaking community in Burlington with a lot of refugees from the Congo and that part of the world, who are all French speakers. So this is kind of the next kind of group that we're trying, and we have quite a few contacts already, and thinking of how to create events that may include, and recognize this whole new French. I mean, it's a lot of people. It's hundreds, or if not thousands, of new French speakers in Burlington. So and in the county. So we're trying to work with our local reality. And,
yes,
it's very
it's making a connection.
Yes,
right.
It's very exciting
in the French language.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how about how does this work with people who have come from other nations who speak French, but they're living in basically an English-speaking country?
Sure.
So, how do they learn the English along with the French? With it practicing, or not practicing, but using their official language that they know and they're comfortable with.
Well, learning English, I guess it's a lot of case by case. Kids tend to just learn it at school. They go to school. There's programs there for ESL.
Yes.
I know the Vermont refugee resettlement program is very active in Vermont, and and I'm sure they offer classes and support for adults. And there are adults who may never learn the language.
We don't usually hear a lot from people trying to learn English.
Yeah, we don't teach English.
Because we don't teach English.
Yeah.
But obviously, if somebody was looking for help finding a source, we can help putting them through the school system for the most
So
part.
we try also to be a little bit be really clear on what we offer,
Yeah.
but also what other services,
other resources
may be available around French in our area, and we're always happy to, refer people, connect them with, whatever other group may help them, may be able to help them. So
one of the things we do with Alliance Francaise, we have a French cart. You might have seen it if you've been on the marketplace, Church
Not
Street
lately.
Marketplace. Well, every year we put out a table, and now we have a cart, and it looks French. Actually, Richard is actually the chair of the cart committee.
Okay, now, what do you do to make it look French?
it's a little
seriously.
vendor cart on wheels with a
yeah.
blue awning, and it's actually, that's a nice program we have with the Church Street Marketplace Association.
Yes.
Where during the summer month we have this. It's like a little information booth on Church Street that's French speaking, recognizing that we have all these French speaking visitors, and so it's this presence on Church Street in Burlington, where they can get some basic information about Burlington and Church Street and in French. So it's usually Saturday and Sunday afternoons during the summer. Like it should start like next week or the week after, weather dependent.
Right.
And yes.
It's volunteers again from the Alliance that will staff the cart, and just to be visible. So people that do speak French, they'll see the colors and they'll come over. They'll be
And we have little flags like
Right,
Quebec and
right,
French flags.
Right.
And,
Right. And then people from other countries that hear the French being spoken, even if they're not Quebec or France French.
It's French is French.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. And then they'll come in and they'll want to know more, and they'll ask for help.
So does the cart say Alliance Francaise?
Yeah, we have a logo on it, and it also says information en français, which means information in French.
I got it.
And then we have a big sandwich board that clearly says that we're providing information in French. So
you don't have food.
No.
It's an information.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we have
yes.
a few things like little pins and stickers that say "Je parle français." I speak
little
French.
souvenirs.
Yeah. And then some brochures, basic brochures, but mostly Burlington and Church Street.
So it's a
Marketplace.
cooperative between the downtown Burlington Marketplace and the Alliance Francaise, working together to promote that we are French friendly here in Burlington. And so the cart was just a visual that people could go to.
Yeah.
Any other organizations or groups that you are working with in Burlington or affiliated with?
In the past, we've worked with the Chamber of Commerce, for example. Like a few years back, we organized a one-day conference on where
French-friendly seminar.
Yeah, so it was geared towards again local businesses, lots in the hospitality industry, where we had a whole day of presentations on different aspects of how to make your business more French friendly. So recognizing that a lot of your customers may be French speakers. So we and that was quite successful.
It was we had a full house, and we had it at the Hilton. And the Vermont Quebec Initiative, I don't know if you remember that, there was the Vermont
business
Quebec Business Initiative, Enterprise Initiative, helped promote this and gave some staff to help organize the event. So we worked a little bit with the state of Vermont and the Lake Champlain Chamber of Commerce. So we reach out, and we have an event every year. We have the gala. It's a fundraiser for the Alliance Francaise, and we invite our dignitaries from Quebec, and it's France. The Consul General to France is invited to come.
From Boston.
From Boston, in Boston, yes. And the representative for Canada and representative for Quebec. There's a whole lot more countries that but we're just starting with these 3 for right now.
Sure. Now, how long has this been going on here in Burlington? You mentioned
Alliance
something
Francaise?
about 7 years ago.
So 7 years, the Honfleur Sister City. That's how long the Honfleur Sister City has
So we need
has-
to talk about what that
Okay.
is too.
The Alliance Francaise has been around a lot longer.
Yeah, it's 20,
probably 20 years
20,
now.
25 years.
20 years
I mean,
now.
it's
Wow.
So, yeah, and different people
but
volunteer
not in
to be-
Burlington.
in Burlington.
Yes, in Burlington.
Really?
The Lake Champlain, the Alliance Francaise of the Lake Champlain region for
Oh, good.
the last 20 years. Different presidents, different staff members and board members, but continuous for about 20
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
Yep.
I wonder why I haven't heard about this.
See, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this.
I think we're a little more prominent now that it may have been in the years past. I mean, it's growing too.
We're
you
more
know.
visible now, I think.
I think we're
yeah.
more
More
visible,
outreach
yeah,
and
yes.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
When I was speaking with the mayor here
Okay.
in St. Albans, I called him to see if he had any connection with the Alliance Francaise, and he told me more about what you were about, and he definitely is aware of it, and what he thought the goals were. And he told me that in terms of cross-border tourism and so forth, that at the Chamber of Commerce here is a map for people from either country who might be traveling from here up into Canada, some of the directions about how to get to different towns in, what do I want to say, in Canada. And the same thing for the Canadians if they come down here and they want information about different places they can travel in Vermont.
Right.
So I thought that was a nice step.
Absolutely. And then we, again, Burlington, I think a lot of cities in Vermont, I think, are starting to do more of the translation, and that's what Richard's business is a technical translation, but he does a lot he's done some for the mayor, he's done some for the governor, different times where we've had events that we wanted to do a letter, a promotion, and City of Burlington, for example, at the airport, we did a lot of translation there, right? So when I was at the North American Cities of Francophones and Francophiles event in Quebec City, representing Burlington and Mayor Weinberger, we talked about the translations that we've done and why is French signage important, and we listed off the parks. The parks department that does bilingual, the airport that does the meters have the French sticker. So every community can do that. There's nothing stopping anyone from doing it. I think St. Albans being so close to the border, right?
It
and
is.
Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu right across here. The partnership of the meeting you were talking about that your friend went to and introduced us to come here tonight. So we were glad to do that. But there's more that we can do. And there's resources. I think that's the message. Is the Alliance Francaise is a resource for Vermont, all Vermont communities and businesses and towns. Reach out to us. We'll see what we can do to help you get connected.
So we find ourselves a little bit being at this nexus of almost, I don't want to say politics, but for example, like if the governor of Vermont, there's something French related, we tend to be involved or as Liz said, so the flag raising happens every year. It's basically at the end of the Francophonie month, that's a worldwide kind of month of French speaking, if you want. And so it's an event and there's actually a flag of Francophonie. It's a flag. It looks a bit like the Olympic flag, but it represents all
Colors,
it represents all the French.
It's round?
Yeah.
I saw
Round
it in
without-
different colors.
Yes.
Yeah, it represents
Yes.
all the French-speaking countries in the world. So there's this one event where the governor, when it's in Burlington every two or 3 years, the city of the Burlington hosts it.
Right.
The government of Canada, the government of the province of Quebec, and the French government, these are all represented. And we tend to, when it's in Burlington, Liz has done most of the organizing, but the Alliance is very central in organizing that. So we find ourselves being kind of the Alliance being a little bit of the prominent organization when it comes to all things French, but even as far as the different governments are concerned. So.
And we've worked with,
Good.
matter of fact, the Secretary of Commerce, Mike Sherling, his staff, Wendy Knight, and we are trying to make sure that we are able to help them, and we are offering to help them promote not just our own businesses. And there's some statistics here I brought with me here, but just from Quebec. So the Quebec government wants to do business in Vermont just as much as Vermont wants Quebec and Canada and other countries to come and start business here, right?
Sure.
And to say that we're French friendly is one thing, but to make it a home for people from these French-speaking countries to say, I can move my family or part of the business and not lose that culture, I think is the message. And I think that's where the Alliance Francaise comes in, is we're part of that body that makes sure that we're there no matter what's happening in the schools, whatever language is being taught in the schools, we're still going to be doing the French part. And then in the community, we're promoting it to be available for not just the businesses, but for the families that might be moving and feeling at home.
Well, I've had the feeling from time to time that there are a fair number of Canadians who come into this community because it's so close. I sometimes hear the French language, and I think that's a good thing.
It is.
Why shouldn't we be friendly neighbors, right?
Oh,
Right,
absolutely.
right. And it's great to be bilingual, to practice to be bilingual. It opens so many doors, not just, other languages as well, but obviously we're here to talk about the French.
Do you know how much teaching of French there is in our high schools, for instance? Do you know it all?
Well, in Burlington, at least, it's one of the language being taught. But interestingly enough, so at our last flag raising, as the new Consul General from France came from Boston to Burlington for this event, he also met with the superintendent of schools in Burlington and about starting a whole language immersion, French language immersion program. So this is very exciting. So we're looking at this, and we obviously are very supportive of that. We're not involved in it because it's between the consulate, but we. Was very interesting that it happened during this event that we were very instrumental in organizing.
Right,
so
facilitating.
The
conversation anyway,
so it felt good to know that, that's how things happen. You bring people together.
Yes, and another thing about learning a language that's foreign to you is that it's good for the brain.
Right.
And it's good for connections with people, maybe as you travel or whatever. But I remember we had Spanish, we had French,
Latin.
and I took French and Latin because I was interested in nursing, and that's what I did for a living. And Latin, a lot of the words in the medical field have a base that's from Latin, so that was very useful. You never know.
Never know.
You just never know. So get out there. I always say to the young people, learn everything you can.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's really important.
Yeah.
You never know when it's going to come in handy. Okay, let's see. So you're about bringing Quebec and Northern Vermont closer together, international relationships, and teaching French. Now, let's say there's a school where a high school is not teaching French, but a couple of youth want to learn French. Can they learn it through you or no?
They can.
So we do custom classes for business, and we do personal classes, private classes, whatever. Our teachers are there to do whatever people need, to supplement whatever you're getting in university or in the high school or in the grade schools. So think of it as, if you want to do something unique, a certain type of subject even, you just have to let us know. I don't think we get a lot of that. People will sign up for what's on the website for the types of classes, which are more structurally organized to go from one to the other. But I think we're there to do more than that. It's just people don't know about the custom classes.
Sure.
So we're trying, and we do the business classes as well. Like that can be a custom. We'll come to you. We'll come to your organization. You do a luncheon,
With your employees.
five luncheon days, and we'll come and during lunch we'll show you what you need to know
And
for your particular
about-
organization and your business.
Okay. And
And the same thing with personal. If it's a young person, whatever the families want to do, and how and where.
okay. Let's see what else.
We just haven't done a lot because
No,
we haven't been
no.
asked to. So
Okay. Now, would you, where did I put that in my notes? Oh, would you explain, these are little things, but what Francophone means? I looked it up, so I know. And en fleur, whatever.
Yeah, we can.
Go ahead and tell, so that when you refer to Francophone or en fleur, that people know what you're talking
Okay, so francophone is a French word, originally means French speaking, basically.
Yes.
So someone who's a francophone is someone who speaks French. Someone's a francophile, so someone who likes French, may not speak the language, but may like the language or interested in the culture or interested in French-speaking countries. And so Liz mentioned several times the network of francophone and francophile cities in North America, which is an informal organization between a certain number of cities in North America that have a history, either are French-speaking cities or have a history of. So there's, for example, Burlington is part of it because of our history. There's New Orleans.
New Orleans,
you
there's
may want-
Moncton, there's in British Columbia. It's the North American, not just United States and not just Canada, but all together. And they're growing. There's an organization to do the similar kind of thing that what we're doing here with whether it's the Vermont Quebec initiative or being in the Alliance Francaise, is trying to get people to share their knowledge about what they've done in their community, create a database for resources. So it's only 3 years old. I went to the inaugural event, and there were 500 people there. 500
now,
people.
this was what again?
This is the North American cities of Francophones and Francophiles.
Oh, okay.
In Quebec City, there were 500 people
Wonderful.
who came to
From
the conference.
all these cities around
From
the
all
North-
these cities.
in North America.
Right. And so there's an interest. There's a lot of people wanting to do more.
Sure.
And that was an opportunity to do that.
And that's why it's important for you to be out there so that people can learn about what's available. Absolutely. That's why I'm here.
Right. So en fleur
Is
is
a whole
it's
other-
a whole other world because that's why there's the Burlington en fleur sister city.
HONFLEUR.
Right,
Yes.
en fleur,
Okay.
right. And Richard can certainly add to this too, but that's the one that I'm the president of. I was asked to be the president, the chair of the En Fleur Sister City Committee by the mayor of Burlington 7 years ago. That's the one. And En Fleur is a port city in Honfleur, France, in the Normandy region. And it's where Samuel de Champlain sailed from to the New France, which was, as you know, it was America, North America and Canada together. Vermont was part of the New France at one time. Anyway, so but what we shared in common was the waterfront. You know, we have the Lake Champlain. We had Samuel Champlain that came from there. We have small business. We're an art community. We're a little bustling community. En Fleur, same thing. They are speaking to get business to come to them as well. We did, as En Fleur, I'll give you some examples, some things that we've done in the last 7 years. So we had the Boy Scouts that were making a trip to France. And because we had the En Fleur Sister City, we had people there that were willing to welcome them. We organized a baseball game with the Boy Scouts. And they didn't speak a word of English. And the kids in France, and our kids did not speak French. But they played baseball. And
And
they
that's a good
built
time.
relationships.
Common denominator.
They build relationship. They use translators. They were emailing back and forth. So here you are, right? You're creating this relationship for the future, right?
And they'll never forget it.
No. And we work with Burlington High School, and we created opportunities for Skyping and the school
And
system
also
there.
they actually had one of their school trips, like the French class organized these school trips to France on a regular basis. So one of the last trips, they actually, instead of just visiting Paris, they also went to Honfleur, stayed a few days there, went to the local high school, and so they got to meet with local families and local high school students. So,
and we've done a lot
and
with.
so we tend to facilitate these things.
Right.
We don't
Sure.
organize them, but we help putting people in touch, which is exactly
Networking, right?
exactly what
Yes.
the notion of a sister city is about. Is that so we have those two cities with some common interest,
Denominators.
from historical or cultural perspective, and,
Sure.
and as a committee, so we're very much in touch with their local committee, and they've become really good friends of ours over the years. But we also try to have other people in our communities get to meet and
Keep growing it.
Sure.
That's why it's important, this trip that's happening in September with 12 people, going, 15 people going to meet our counterparts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And families that we've had here. And now these people didn't know some of those people, and they're going to get an experience, French and English, so that they are comfortable. And then who knows, where that goes, right? That just,
You make
just keeps,
friends, yeah.
keeps
Absol-
growing.
absolutely.
And we've done a lot with arts, because one of our initiatives is the art initiative. So we've done, again, I'm going to keep mentioning Burlington only because it's the Burlington Sister City Committee.
Sure.
But it's bigger than that, because we had like Sabre Fields, right? And our Vermont artists that went over to France, created a studio environment, and we invited the community, and the media loved
an
it over
exhibit
there.
there,
It was
and-
an exhibit.
Yeah,
Sabre
she
Fields put on an
exhibited in
exhibit.
Honfleur, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and now we're welcoming. We're willing and able to welcome them to reciprocate and come.
Sure.
We have museum reciprocation agreement. between we have the Fleming, Shelburne Farms, Shelburne Museum, Burlington City Arts.
So people from Honfleur can come here and have free admission at.
Nice.
And
Nice.
if we go to Honfleur, we have free admission to their
same
local arts
reciprocal.
museum.
And
Yeah.
the Boudin Museum is right
It's
there
a big
in
impressionist museum.
Sounds like you enjoy doing this.
It is. It's fun. Yeah.
I just get that feeling.
So,
It is fun to
yeah.
accomplish these things, though,
So
right? And there's so many
Yeah.
people can
So
benefit
we've
from it.
hosted people from Honfleur here in Burlington several times. The last time was last fall.
October 2017.
17, yeah. So there, but also 12 or 15 people who also stayed with families, and we had organized a whole program of,
Activities to see,
and tours, and so it's kind of the idea of exchange between the two
So we
cities.
took them to the Maritime Museum as an example, right? Because again, it's all about the water and the lakes,
Yes,
and
sure.
we took them to different. When they went to Shelburne Museum, the thing they're most impressed about is the fact that the Impressionists, the Monet, that's right there. They say, in their country, they can't get that close. They can almost touch it. And they walk away and they go, and they get chills on their arms, They're like, we were there, and we had to go to America to see that close. And they just think that's the coolest thing that
Sure.
Vermont has to offer.
That's really cute.
And they love the Intervale. We shouldn't take
yeah.
that lightly, because this whole farm to table experience, and they love the whole back to
Nature.
and how we do that. And they have Calvados and apples and
So we,
Calvados.
Calvados.
What is that?
Apple brandy.
Apple brandy.
Oh.
Yeah, they're famous for it over there.
So that's another
So we have
thing.
ciders, right?
That's another thing we have in common. Like
Right.
the Normandy is a region where they produce a lot of milk and they produce a lot of apples.
Just like here.
And hard cider really originally is from that region and Brittany. So I was very proud to have them taste some of our local
Sure.
cider here too, and I think they really
They
enjoyed
really
it.
like it. My son-in-law and daughter made a sparkling cider, and they used a champagne yeast the first time
Yeah,
they came
that was
over,
pretty good.
and they had bottled it, and I served it at a barbecue that one of our
Events,
Honfleur family events put on, and I was serving it, and they're going, "Oh, this is so good!"
Oh.
And they're like, and I'm like, "I like it," and I said, "No, this is really good. They ought to patent this." And they started all of a sudden having this other conversation about how our young people are coming up to do the same kind of things that their people were doing, and they're like, "We have that in common. We should have a competition." Here we are again. We have a competition, but it's fun, right?
Sure.
And everybody's learning from it. So
That's great. Sounds like there have been a lot of interesting developments
Yes.
through the years.
Yes. Yes.
One thing
leads to another.
triggers another. Yes.
So I like to speak about almost like we're part of this ecosystem of like kind of around French, about the language, the culture, and again, like due to our very specific circumstances here in northern Vermont, there's this additional dimension of, visitors from Quebec, people with Quebecois, ancestry and culture, and so it's very, and so it's kind of trying to tie all that together, and it's been very interesting, yeah.
We don't have a shortage of ideas. There's a list. There's a list. It's
Neither do I. That's why I never rest. And I think you don't either. The ideas just keep coming.
Yeah.
But when you're inspired and you like to make a difference, or you try to make a difference at least, and you feel like you are doing something valuable or worthwhile, it's motivating, and it makes you want to just do more, and my friends are always saying, Linda, will you please slow down?
I think we're on the same camp.
You're doing too much.
I get that a lot.
But it not only just motivates me, but it makes me feel valuable and alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
La joie de vivre.
Yes, joie de vivre, absolutely.
Yes.
I tell my family, and this is not morbid, when my last breath comes, I want to know that I tried to make a difference.
Yeah, thank you.
That's how I feel.
Thank you. I think this helps because hopefully people will see this production and maybe hear some things that they're interested in, look us up,
Well, we're getting down to the last 10 minutes or so, but if the phone number isn't on there, but if we put the phone number up and someone would like to call in and pose a question, feel free to do that while we're here.
Absolutely.
I think there's the one last thing we absolutely need to talk
Go for
about,
it.
and I'd be happy to introduce that. So as you may have understood by now, Liz Véronneau here is
yes.
very, very central to a lot of those French-related activities and initiatives in our region, and she has been for many years. So this year she received a very high honor from the French government, which is she was named Chevalier de l'Ordre National du Mérite, which basically she's a knight of the National Order of Merit, which is one of the highest honor that the French government would bestow to civilians. It's the equivalent of like military medals, but for people, for civilians whose work and actions do a lot in promoting the language, the French language, and the values of France, and so the Consul General of France, who came from Boston, and we had a ceremony where she was bestowed the medal. I mean, I don't know if you want to show the medal.
Oh yes, please.
I brought it only because sometimes people like to see it.
I'm sure it's well deserved.
I like to share it with the community at large.
So we have to understand that it's usually mostly people in France who receive that. So so that we would have someone outside of the country.
That way. There. Look at that. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
There. Wow.
So they pinned that on me.
And the blue, that's a French color.
Yes.
And is it that shade of blue, the French color?
So this is actually a special ribbon that they make these medals from, and if you feel that, how nice and heavy that is, it's a really nice. It's a nice medal.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the flag, the two flags.
Absolutely. But I think the honor to me is to be recognized. But as important as that is realizing all the work that I've put out doing different things that have to do with French and France, and that it's important that the French government values all this.
Of course they do.
So much so that they awarded this to me. So to me, I couldn't have done it without the people around me. And Richard is one of those people who's been by my side for the last 10 years anyway.
Wow.
But the people on the teams, on the Enflure Sister City, the Alliance Francaise, the state of Vermont, everybody who's hears something and says, "Yeah, I'll help. Let me. What can I do to help? How can we promote this?"
Well,
So,
you know,
thank
that's
you.
because you are who you are. and it's easy for people to approach you
Yeah.
and feel comfortable and appreciate what you do and want to be a part of it. So congratulations, Lisa.
Merci.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
That's really, and I'm sure very well deserved.
Thank you. I'm proud for Vermont to have me here. It's kind of like, we all do it together.
That's cute. Well, thank you. I wasn't going to let that go, but I'm glad you brought it up when you did, because sometimes I get sidetracked.
Yes.
We're down to our last 5 minutes,
Okay.
believe it or not. So, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to be sure to mention? You're an engineer?
By training.
Yes.
But I actually started pretty much right away in the translation business, but I'm very much specialized in engineering and technical translation into French.
So do you do that to help businesses?
Well, it's a business in itself, what I do. But yeah, my clients are essentially companies that sell industrial type products. So,
Okay.
so I do a lot of users manuals for all kind of
Translate
all kind of equipments, and then there's some other side. Like locally, I have very few local customers because there's only so much of a market. But I've worked locally, for example, with the Lake Champlain Basin program. I've done some translation for them. Like last year, they published that State of the Lake report. They worked together with the province of Quebec and New York State. So that report was bilingual. So it was created in French, and I translated.
Well, the reason I mention that is because there could be business people out there who
absolutely.
could benefit
Yes.
from
Yeah, yes.
your knowledge.
So I have
and
an office in
experience.
Burlington. I have a business. I have a website.
There you go.
Yeah.
Speaking of website, I wanted to mention this for the
Sure.
state of Vermont, the Lake Champlain Tasting Trail. We were talking about Calvados and all that. Starting International Culinary Route. It's a new program. So if people want to go on the website, and I don't know if we could use maybe a translation on that too.
I wasn't aware of
Because
that.
yeah, I know. It's brand new. I just got it today. Just got it today. Here's another project for you.
Oh, this is from the Agency of Commerce and Community
Right, but it's a
Development.
new tour. But it's another one of those where we share this again with Quebec and in Canada, and it's one of those opportunities for people to come over and
Is it
see
all
what we have.
wines?
This particular one is a tasting trail. It's a little bit of everything, but they just showed the wine on this
Because we
site.
have so many new beer.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
in Vermont. It would be nice to have something where people
Yes.
could take a tour.
And then Canada and Quebec too, because we've actually had some trips that we've organized with Alliance Francaise, Cabane à Sucre with Sugar on Snow. We've done beer tastings. We've done different wine trips up there. So
Okay.
over
Any
the years,
scotch?
We haven't done the Scotch. Ireland.
So I said we should still mention this event with Saint-Jean-de-Richelieu and here in St. Albans, because it's here in St. Albans.
Yes, please.
What is that?
So that's what brought us here initially,
Today.
because our president was invited to join a group that met in a cafe a couple of weeks back.
Is this Mark?
Yes, Mark
Juneau.
yes. Where there's people from Saint-Jean-de-Richelieu, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu in Quebec, and want to establish some relationship with St. Albans, and we were invited to try to join too. So that's happening here. I'm not sure when the next meeting is, but
I'd have to check the
Yeah,
website.
Well, do you get articles in the local paper sometime about when there is something coming,
we tend to announce all these on our website. So usually, I'm sure we'll have the
But
information.
people have to know about that ahead of time.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Whereas people who might not know, or if you can get on the radio or have someone from your organization speak out at an Elks Club meeting or some other American Legion or whatever, just throwing ideas
Right.
out.
No, we've had the Alliance Francaise speak at the Rotary, Burlington Rotary, different Rotaries.
Yeah,
The
good.
genealogy.
Vermont genealogy last weekend. I was asked to do
We
a
have a
presentation.
Rotary Club here.
Yep.
We have an Elks Club here. American Legion, all kinds of things. So.
We'll be happy. Pass the word around. Make us available. That's the
Okay.
website on our card there.
Okay, I'll keep it, and I know a lot of people, so.
Okay, that's good.
And then if people want to announce French-related events, they can let us know. We have a newsletter that goes out to 1,000 people.
Oh, good.
So
good.
we can announce things like
Well,
that.
listen, we're down to about 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay.
I want to thank you both so much, Lisa and Richard, for coming on the show, and keep up the good work. And thanks for driving up here. And
Thank you for having
wonderful
us.
to meet you. It's my pleasure to have you on the show.
Merci.
Folks, I hope
Merci
you.
beaucoup.
Au revoir.
Oui.
Folks, I hope you learned a lot like I did tonight. And I will see you again next week for another interesting Oh, wait, next week I will not be here. I'll have someone. We'll talk about that later. Okay, good night. Have a great week.
Good night.
Good night.